Our story begins with the creation of coal in the ancient marshlands and the forests of old. The plants that lived there never got to decay. Instead, their carbon got buried away. The original peoples, they lived with the land. They took from it too, but they worked it by hand. This method did limit how much they could take, which worked out much better for everyone's sake. Then the colonists came, bringing their baggage. They brought disease too and did lots of damage. Treaties were signed by the Cherokee chiefs to keep land for their nation to live on in peace. And although the U.S. signed those treaties before, the settlers were greedy. They still wanted more. The treaties they tore, people's rights they ignored. Well, the Cherokee Phoenix would report and record. So this salamander here is carrying a copy of the Cherokee Phoenix, a bilingual newspaper written in both English and Cherokee to spread resistance to the Indian Removal Act and to the Trail of Tears that would come, right? To spread resistance to forced removal. And so the Cherokee language was an oral language up until that era, but a famous Cherokee man named Sequoyah invented a syllabary with his daughter, and they spread that syllabary throughout the Cherokee Nation. Within a few months of this newspaper being printed and distributed to the Cherokee people, the Cherokee became the most literate people in all of Appalachia as they were reading and writing en masse about their struggle, right? Kaide, do you want to jump in on this?
They petitioned, protested, and sued the courts.
But the U.S. president removed them by force.
They walked through the winter with so little food.
Many died on the journey. They cried as they moved.
The forests cut down, train tracks spread for miles.
Coal, cotton, and lumber to make money piles.
Wanting homes and employment, the settlers moved west.
And got trapped in the company towns with their debts.
Workers weren't paid in money, just company script.
That they had to give back.
That they had to give back in the rent.
Enough was enough.
The miners fought back.
They picked up their guns.
And they launched an attack.
They wore red bandanas.
They shut down the mines.
They went out on strike.
And they held picket lines.
The government sided with bosses, of course.
And sent in the army to use lethal force.
And in response to the workers in the coal mines standing up for themselves and, arming themselves and demanding the right to unionize, the coal mining companies collaborated with the U.S. Marshals and the National Guard to go to war with these workers. They even hired planes and dropped bombs on these workers from the sky. It's the only example of workers on strike in the United States or any other Western country being bombed by planes that their bosses paid for, right? And so the Battle of Blair Mountain wasn't seen as a victory right away. A lot of people died. But the willingness of workers to stand and fight so fiercely for such basic rights inspired other workers across the U.S. to stand and fight as well. And it led to some of the most important gains ever made for workers, right? Access to medicine, better health and safety conditions, even access to electricity, right? This light bug here is plugging in electricity to the party. So the workers here are celebrating their very hard-fought wins, right? They're singing their union anthems like Solidarity Forever. They're drinking their moonshine, they're dancing, right? But for decades, the workers who mined the coal to power all the big cities and big industries in America had no electricity themselves until they stood up for that and fought for that as well, right?
The community as a whole had to get organized.
They picketed and lobbied.
Even broke those machines.
But at the movement's peak got sold out by big greens.
In stopping the mechanization, these green groups have pushed for mere regulation.
Mountains got destroyed even more than before.
And those miners, they couldn't find work anymore.
Allying themselves with local environmentalists and farmers and faith communities, everyone coming together to say, hey, we don't agree on everything, and we don't have to agree on everything, but we can agree on this, because this is a lose, lose, lose. It means way less jobs for people in our community. It means way more pollution in our rivers, destruction of our mountains. It means whole towns are going to get pushed out of the way, right? You can't live on a mountain that doesn't exist. If they're going into the mountain, You can still be living on top of that mountain. You could have your farm, you could have your little villages, but if they're strip mining that whole mountain, you got to get out, right? And so everyone locally is pushing to abolish this kind of mining because it's a lose, lose, lose. But large environmental NGOs that weren't rooted in the community or accountable to local people had meetings with the mining companies and pressured them to accept regulations on this new kind of mining. And once the companies agreed to some of the regulations that would address the tip of the iceberg of the issues involved with this mining, the large environmental NGOs declared victory, right? So loudly that they signaled to the rest of the country that this issue had been resolved and that we could all turn our attention to other issues, other causes, other regions.
It was changing to chaos with speed.
But the rich just got richer.
Cold smoke filled the skies
They made inside deals
that would keep prices high.
It was clear to the people
Who watched from below that they had to rise up and resist and say no. They passed out opposition. They signed with their paws. They held up the permits by studying laws. They tested the waters, the coal trucks they blocked. They painted banners and rallied a lot. Some people resisted. Waters rebuilt.
the local economy, the soil, and the silt.
They cleaned up the toxins with mushrooms and plants.
Built kitchens and gardens, wrote music and danced.
The fences came down, first peoples reclaimed.
The land's even missing traditions and ways.
All peoples united, the monster was dead. There's wind, sun, and currents that we use instead. Seems to be saved, rain, water to collect. And the community was built with love and respect.
The people in cities kept busy and buzzing.
But now they are working together on something.
They built housing, collectives,
Made better decisions, and figured out life without coal or emissions.
We all have a role when we build from below.
How will you help your community grow?
Damn.
Woo!
Make some noise for Kaide!
Kaide!
And a philosophy, right, is to strip resources out of the earth as fast as we can. Without thinking about not even the next generation, let alone 7 generations into the future, right? And so we know this chapter that we're in, that we're stuck in right now, has to close. Everyone here knows that. This chapter that we're living through right now is going to close. You know what? Even those we oppose know this chapter's got to close. They just want to take as much profit out before it closes on them.